In the humid air of 1821, St. Augustine Parish, Louisiana, was a place defined by the Mississippi River's slow, muddy crawl and the unyielding reign of King Cotton. It was a world of fewer than 800 souls, where every person, from the wealthiest planter in his grand house to the enslaved man toiling in the oppressive heat, knew their precise, unchangeable place. For 37 years, in the very heart of this rigid world, Sister Evangelene stood as a pillar of piety, a woman whose name was spoken with the kind of hushed reverence usually reserved for saints. From the pulpit of St. Dominic's, she delivered sermons on purity and virtue to the wives of plantation owners, her words a balm to their consciences. She counseled young women on the sacred, unbreakable importance of chastity. Her reputation was so immaculate, her devotion so absolute, that families sent their most troublesome enslaved women, the defiant ones, the rebellious ones, to her convent for moral reformation, a cleansing through prayer and unwavering religious discipline. But when a ravenous fire consumed the convent on a dark night in 1858, and authorities finally descended into the cellar that Sister Evangelene had always forbidden anyone from entering, they discovered something so horrifying it would be erased from every church record within 48 hours. They found evidence of a chilling operation, one that had been producing children, dozens of them, through methods that made her sermons on chastity sound like the cruelest, most twisted joke ever told. The church sealed the investigation with a speed that spoke volumes. But the account ledgers that miraculously survived the flames tell us exactly what Sister Evangelene was truly doing in that cellar, night after terrifying night. Before we delve deeper into the story of Sister Evangelene and the horrifying truth hidden beneath her convent, I need you to do something. If you are hearing this dark history for the first time, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss the forgotten truths we unearth together. And in the comments below, tell me what state or city you're listening from. I want to see where our community of truth seekers is growing. Now, let's pull back the veil and discover what Sister Evangelene was really preaching. What makes this case particularly chilling is the sheer scale of her hypocrisy and how flawlessly it was hidden behind the sacred authority of the Church. The St. Augustine Parish of 1821 was a raw, new community. The aging Father Benedict Rousseau, who had shepherded his scattered flock since 1803, was a man weary with age. His letters to the diocese in New Orleans were filled with laments of his declining health and his deep, paternalistic concern for the spiritual welfare of the unfortunate creatures held in bondage throughout his parish. So when the Sisters of Divine Mercy arrived that April, they seemed like a direct answer to prayers no one had dared to voice. The order was small, obscure, led by a woman who had taken the name Sister Evangelene upon her vows. She was perhaps 40 years old, but her gaze held a hardness that suggested a life lived far beyond her years. She spoke French with a distinct Haitian accent, her English was careful and precise, and she conducted herself with the absolute, unshakable certainty of someone who had not merely found her calling, but had forged it herself. With her came 3 other sisters, Sister Marie, Sister Constance, and Sister Beatrice, each younger, each more deferential, each a shadow to Evangelene's commanding presence. The Delamore family, owners of one of the parish's most sprawling and prosperous plantations, generously donated the land for the new convent. The property was deliberately isolated, sitting 2 miles from town, accessible only by a single dirt road that dissolved into impassable mud during heavy rains. It consisted of 40 acres of partially cleared land, a large house in considerable disrepair, and several outbuildings that were remnants of a failed tobacco venture. In a letter now preserved at the Parish Historical Society, Charles Delamore explained his generosity. It is our Christian duty to support those who minister to the souls of all God's children, particularly those held in bondage who require moral instruction and the comfort of religion. What Delamore's sanctimonious letter failed to mention was the very specific, private arrangement he had made with Sister Evangelene. The convent would accept enslaved women, purchased or donated by parish families, for the purpose of spiritual rehabilitation. These women, Evangelene explained with practiced solemnity, had proven particularly difficult, rebellious, or had committed offenses that rendered them unsuitable for plantation labor. The convent would reform them through prayer, hard work, and intensive religious instruction. The arrangement seemed to benefit everyone. The planters could remove troublesome property without the financial loss of selling them. The Church could proudly demonstrate its commitment to the spiritual welfare of enslaved souls. And the convent would gain a self-sustaining labor force to work its land and establish its mission. By the summer of 1821, the first 7 women had been transferred to the Sisters of Divine Mercy. Their names appear in a single, cold entry in the Delamore estate records: Patience, Ruth, Delphine, Mercy, Hannah, Rebecca, and Grace. Their ages ranged from 16 to 32. The notation beside each name was chillingly simple: to convent for reform. The convent's daily routine, as Sister Evangelene described it to Father Rousseau during his occasional, carefully managed visits, followed the strict order of a devout religious life. The women rose before dawn for prayers, worked the fields and gardens through the day, received religious instruction in the afternoon, and retired after evening vespers. Sister Evangelene would report steady, encouraging progress in their spiritual development. She spoke of rebellious natures being gradually softened by prayer, of proud women learning the virtues of humility and acceptance of their lot as God's divine will. Father Rousseau, in his correspondence, expressed profound satisfaction with the arrangement. What he never saw, what no one was ever allowed to see, was what happened after the sun went down. The convent's main building, constructed in the 1790s, had a feature unusual for the region: a full cellar, originally built by a French merchant for storing temperature-sensitive wines. This cellar extended beneath the entire house, accessible only by a heavy trapdoor hidden in what had been the merchant's office, and was now Sister Evangelene's private, locked chamber. By October of 1821, a strange quiet had fallen over St. Augustine Parish. It was nothing anyone could name, but plantation owners began noting it in their journals. Enslaved populations that had been restive now seemed eerily subdued. Whispers of planned escapes in the quarters went silent. Women who had once been defiant now kept their eyes fixed to the ground, their voices low. Meanwhile, the convent remained a place of profound isolation. Sister Evangelene politely discouraged visitors, citing the vital importance of maintaining an atmosphere of deep, uninterrupted contemplation. Father Rousseau's monthly visits, conducted in the formal parlor over tea, became the only regular contact the sisters had with the outside world. The women being reformed were never present. They are in a state of deep spiritual discipline, Sister Evangelene would explain smoothly, and must not be distracted from their prayers and labors. The account ledgers, however, told a very different, horrifying story. These books, maintained in Sister Evangelene's precise, elegant hand, recorded every transaction. But they were written in a subtle code, appearing entirely innocent until you understood the monstrous truth you were reading. The first entry that should have raised alarms appeared in November 1821, just 7 months after the convent's founding. It read simply, "Delivered of a male child, 7th day. Mother Delphine. Baptism performed by Sister E. Father recorded as unknown. Child placed according to arrangement with C.D. Within 3 weeks, a similar entry, delivered of a female child, 12th day. Mother Ruth. Father recorded as unknown. Child placed according to arrangement with H.B. The initials C.D. and H.B. corresponded to Charles Delamore and Henry Beaumont, 2 of the parish's most prominent planters. The phrase placed according to arrangement appeared again, and again, and again. By the end of 1822, 9 children had been born at the convent and placed according to arrangement. What was terrifying wasn't just their existence. It was the timing. The women had arrived in the spring and summer of 1821. They could not have been pregnant upon arrival, or it would have been noted. Yet by November, births were occurring. The mathematics was impossible, a biological paradox that screamed of a terrible truth, but only if you were looking for it. In January 1823, a new resident arrived. Her name was Sarah. The Delamore estate records read, "Sarah, aged 19, to convent for moral reformation following incidents of willful disobedience and attempted corruption of other property." The phrase attempted corruption had a specific, sinister meaning. She had been teaching others to read. Sarah's arrival changed everything. Educated by the Delamore daughter before the law forbade it, she understood the power of patterns and documentation. She watched Sister Evangelene's movements, noted the visitors who came only after dark in unmarked carriages, and listened to the muffled sounds that emanated from the cellar at night. The cellar itself had been modified. The original space was now divided into smaller rooms, each with a heavy wooden door that could be barred from the outside. These rooms, Sister Evangelene explained when questioned, were for women in the deepest throes of spiritual crisis, requiring separation for their own protection. By March, Sarah understood the true purpose of those rooms. In a letter she managed to smuggle out, a letter that would only surface decades later, she wrote with chilling clarity, The sisters do not take vows of poverty, nor do they live as servants of God. Sister E conducts a business, and we are the merchandise. Men come after dark, wealthy men. They pay Sister E in gold, which she records in her ledgers. Then they are taken downstairs. Each of us is kept in the cellar rooms when our time comes. Sister E calculates it by the moon and by her records of when each woman last bled. The men who come are those who wish for children but whose wives cannot provide them, or who wish for children who can be sold for profit without the scandal of association. Sister E provides the solution. She makes the matches according to complexion and features she believes will produce the most valuable offspring. Sarah's letter never reached its destination. The priest who unknowingly carried it, Father Michel Arnaud, stopped at the convent on his return journey. Sister Evangelene served him dinner, pressing him to stay the night. By morning, Father Arnaud was dead, from what Sister Evangelene reported as an apoplectic fit. His belongings were returned to New Orleans. The letter was not among them. The years from 1823 to 1835 saw the convent's operation reach a horrifying efficiency. Sister Evangelene had created a breeding operation disguised as a religious mission, protected by the sanctity of the Church. The ledgers from this period reveal a system operating with cold, business-like precision. Each woman had a page dedicated to her productivity, noting physical characteristics and tracking monthly cycles. The men who visited were identified only by initials, but cross-referencing with payment records would later reveal their identities: plantation owners, merchants, even 2 parish judges. The children born in the cellar followed specific paths. Some were returned to the estates of the men who had paid for their conception. Others were sold privately, with the most valuable, those with the lightest complexions, disappearing into households in New Orleans or even further north, their origins forever erased. The convent expanded, with new buildings to house women in different stages of the system, pregnant, recovering, or being prepared for the next cycle. Sister Evangelene became a woman of quiet, immense influence, her donations to St. Dominic's growing each year, her wealth unquestioned by a grateful Father Rousseau. But some people noticed. Estate managers remarked on the number of light-skinned children appearing on plantations. Wives whispered about husbands' suspicious business trips. And in the slave quarters, the convent became a place of dark folklore, a name whispered in prayers of dread. In 1835, a new figure entered the story. Benjamin Trask, a newspaper editor from Philadelphia with abolitionist sympathies he was smart enough to hide. Taking over the struggling St. Augustine Parish Gazette his reporter's instinct smelled a story. He noticed the absence of records, baptisms that should have been filed, births that appeared from nowhere. His quiet, careful questions led him to Judith Crenshaw, an elderly widow who gave him a crucial piece of advice: if you want to understand what really happens there, don't talk to the planters or the priests. Talk to the midwives. The midwives moved between worlds, seeing secrets no one else did. Trask eventually found Celestine Broussaud, a free woman of color who agreed to speak in secret. "I've attended more than 400 births in this parish," she told him, her voice a low, careful whisper. "But I've never once been called to the convent. Not in 15 years. It tells me she doesn't want witnesses." Celestine showed him her own hidden ledger, documenting 43 births whose timelines were impossible, whose origins were obscured by carefully maintained lies. Trask dug deeper, obtaining payment records, interviewing former overseers, noting the immense quantities of supplies delivered to the supposedly small convent. But he needed a witness. That witness arrived in the spring of 1836. Her name was Rachel. Returned to the Beaumont estate after 4 years at the convent, she was 21 but looked 40, her eyes holding a silent, burning rage. She had given birth 3 times and buried 1 child in the convent's unmarked infant graveyard. In a clandestine meeting in a tobacco barn, Rachel gave Trask the final, damning pieces of the puzzle. Her voice was flat, empty of emotion, as if she had burned through all her feeling and only facts remained. She described the cellar rooms, the bars on the doors, and Sister Evangelene's twisted philosophy. "She keeps 2 books," Rachel explained. "One for the church people. The other shows the truth. Every man who visited, every payment made, every child born, every child sold. She told us once that the second book was her insurance. If anyone ever moved against her, she would reveal every name in it, and the scandal would destroy half the parish." Trask now had everything he needed. He began preparing a series of articles, arranging for simultaneous publication in multiple cities to prevent the story from being suppressed. He was ready to expose the entire monstrous operation. But he never got the chance. If the revelations so far have shocked you, if you are invested in seeing justice done for these women, then I need you to share this video with someone else who needs to hear this story. Hit that like button to help other truth seekers find it, and subscribe so you never miss the conclusions to mysteries like this one. Because what happened next changed everything, and the horror in St. Augustine Parish intensified in ways no one could have ever expected. On the night of October 3, 1836, fire consumed the Sisters of Divine Mercy Convent. The blaze started after midnight, and by the time neighbors saw the hellish glow against the sky, the main building was a roaring inferno. The first man to arrive, Thomas Garrett, later testified that the heat was so intense he couldn't get within 50 yards. But even through the roar of the flames, he heard something that would haunt him for the rest of his life: screaming. Not the screams of 4 women, but many voices, overlapping, desperate, coming from beneath the burning structure. By the time a bucket brigade could be organized, the main structure had begun to collapse. The screaming stopped before the building fell. In his private diary, Garrett confessed something he never told the authorities. Before anyone else arrived, he saw a figure on a fine-blooded horse emerge from behind the barn, fleeing the scene. The rider saw Garrett, hesitated, then spurred his horse into a gallop and vanished. "I knew what I had seen," Garrett wrote. "And I knew that speaking of it would bring nothing but trouble. The man on that horse was someone of importance." By dawn, only smoking ruins remained. The cellar had become a crematorium. The official investigation, led by Sheriff Edmund Fairfax, one of the men whose initials appeared in Evangelene's ledgers, was swift and conclusive: an accidental fire, a tragic loss of 4 devoted sisters. But Benjamin Trask, posing as a church official, gained access to the site. What he saw was recorded in his journal in entries that grew fragmented with horror. The cellar had been divided into 5 rooms, just as Rachel had described. Every charred door had been barred from the outside. Inside, he found the remains of at least 15 individuals, possibly more, clustered near the doors. In one room, he found the tiny remains of 3 small children, huddled together in a corner. "This was not accident," he wrote, his hand shaking. "This was execution." Trask confronted Father Rousseau, presenting his evidence. The priest's face grew troubled, then closed, then carefully neutral. "Mr. Trask," he said, his voice cold, "the church's investigation has concluded. 4 sisters died. That is the official determination." The subtext was a clear and chilling threat: the story will not change, and you will be silent. The cover-up was immediate and absolute. Celestine, the midwife, was visited by men who suggested her health depended on her silence. She fled the parish, her records vanishing forever. Rachel, Trask's primary witness, disappeared. The official record showed her sold to a trader, but the transaction was a ghost, a fabrication to explain her absence. The whispers in the slave quarters said she had been at the convent that night, silenced along with the others. 3 weeks after the fire, a locked wooden box appeared on Father Rousseau's doorstep. Inside were Sister Evangelene's ledgers, the public one, and the secret one, her insurance. A meeting of the parish's most powerful men, Fairfax, Delamore, and a judge whose initials were in the book, was called. The ledgers disappeared, locked away in a church vault or burned to ash, their secrets taken to the grave. The victims were buried in a mass grave, their remains mixed together, marked by a single stone that read, "Sisters of Divine Mercy and those under their care." The parish records listed only 4 names. Trask's office was broken into, his research stolen, his printing press smashed. He was visited by concerned citizens who made it clear his presence was no longer welcome. In January 1837, he sold his newspaper and left Louisiana, defeated. He never practiced journalism again. For the rest of his life, he kept his journal, noting the fates of the men involved. Father Rousseau's slow decline. Sheriff Fairfax's hunting accident. Charles Delamere's bankruptcy. "One more debt unpaid," Trask would write. But he knew true justice would never come. "The guilty will die in their beds," he wrote in 1863, respected by their communities. "The victims remain nameless in an unmarked mass grave." This is the arithmetic of power. The stories lived on only in whispers. In the white community, it became a ghost story. In the black community, it was a cautionary tale of evil disguised as piety. Years later, a formerly enslaved woman named Dinah gave her testimony. "We knew what we was there for," she said. "Sister Evangelene, she told us plain, to be fruitful and multiply, and the fruit we bore would be sold for the glory of God and the profit of the righteous. The worst part was taking our babies every time. We never got to hold them. Never got to keep a single one." Today, the land where the convent stood is a residential subdivision. Mercy Lane and Chapel Road crisscross the ground where these women suffered. There is no marker, no memorial. The Homeowners Association has resisted efforts to create one, fearing it would affect property values. The history remains buried, a deliberate erasure of suffering in favor of contemporary comfort. Sister Evangelene's story is a chilling demonstration of how easily evil can be institutionalized, disguised as virtue, and protected by the powerful. It shows us that the horrors of slavery extended far beyond the cotton fields, and were often perpetrated by those who claimed the highest moral authority. What do you think of this story? Do you believe the fire was set by a wealthy patron, by Sister Evangelene herself, or as a final, desperate act of rebellion by the women trapped inside? How many other operations like this existed, protected by the same conspiracy of silence? Leave your comment below. If you believe these stories must be told, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this video. Because the past isn't dead. It's not even past. It's still here, buried under our feet, demanding to be heard, and asking why those who suffered have been forgotten, while those who profited are still remembered with honor. See you in the next video.